All right, so boss, this one definitely is when the year mislabeling it went really crazy. So we have 2 years, the year ending 2009, the year ending 2010. In March 2010, Boss declared and paid a stock dividend. So we know that there's for sure a stock dividend going on. There were no other equity issuances of any kind during, and that shouldn't be 2009 because that doesn't help us at all. This is really supposed to be 2010. In November of, 2010, that is actually a zero on yours. Boss declared and paid a cash dividend. For the year ending December 31st, 2010, they recorded net income. So we got some net income coming in. We have a cash dividend that was paid, declared, and paid in that year as well. Now let's look at the overall changes of these accounts. I mean, that's always a good place to start. This increased by 50,000. Our APIC increased by 80,000. Okay. And if there was a stock dividend, but no other equity issuance of any kind, then this must have happened with a stock dividend. Our retained earnings fell by, oh golly, what is that? It would be about um, 187.5 thousand dollars. But there's a couple of things going on with retained earnings. Actually, there's three. It looks like the stock dividend would have reduced retained earnings. The cash dividend would have reduced retained earnings. Net income would have increased retained earnings. So in order to really break those pieces apart, I'm going to have to just really analyze the retained earnings account. It started off at 1.5 million, ended up at $1,312,500. And we know that there was net income of 100,000 that would close into retained earnings and increase retained earnings by 100,000. We also know that there was a cash dividend paid and a stock dividend paid. Right? So that's just from an account analysis, not even looking at what it's asking for. But the ask was, what was the price per share of Boss's common stock when the stock dividend was declared? Okay, so we can kind of figure that out pretty easily. If we think that this came from a stock dividend because our common stock and APIC increased with no other equity issuance, then I'm going to line those up in a journal entry that reflects that stock issue. And that would be the charge to retained earnings for that amount. We are just issuing new stock through a dividend means no net effect, right? Just as much equity was reduced as it was introduced with the dividend. Now, to get at the price, right, we can only get a price per share if it's a small stock dividend, which we pretty sure it is because there was a move in APIC. If it was a large stock dividend, there wouldn't be a move in APIC, just a move in common stock. So we take the 130,000 and divide it by the number of shares issued. Can we determine the number of shares issued with the stock dividend? And we can because we have a par value of $10. So we look at the common stock increase of 50,000. And we know that it has a $10 par value. So if we divide that $50,000 amount by a par value, we get that 5,000 shares must have been issued. Well, if we have 5,000 shares, then I can place that here to determine the price per share. And that would be $26 per share at stock dividend. We can also fill in the stock dividend amount here as a reduction to retained earnings. So we know that it took off 130,000. What was the cash dividend per share? All right. So now we just need to figure out, well, how much was the total cash dividend? We can do that now because we've limited the number of variables here. We only have to solve for the cash dividend. So this would be 1.6 million. If we take 130,000 from 1.6 million, the two credit amounts added together, subtract off the amount of that stock dividend, its reduction retained earnings, I would have had just from the beginning balance, the net income, and the stock dividend, 1.47 million. But we came down to this amount. So I must have reduced it in order to get to the $1,312,500. So solving for that tells me that the total dividend was $157,500. Now we just have to figure out the per share amount. Okay. Remember that cash dividends only paid to outstanding shares. So the number of outstanding shares at this time would be the amount we began with plus the 5,000 shares issued here. So $10 par value divided into the 1 million, or you can encompass them both at the same time and just divide it into this. So you're either going to take the $10, divide it into a million, that would get you 100,000. Then you add the 5,000 shares, 105,000. That's the amount that's outstanding. Or just divide 10 into this total amount here, and you'll get the 105,000 more directly. Either way, we have 105,000 shares. And that will give me $1.50 per share. Okay. So that's how you would work this problem. Really, it's just a facility of working with large and small stock dividends. Remember that large stock dividends only only increase common stock by the par value. Small stock dividends increase both APIC and common stock, and they do so at the price, the market price, when the stock dividend was declared.